Hi, good morning.
Hi. Hi, good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the African Business Month Conference. Welcome to the third edition of the African Business Month. We welcome all of you from every part of the world you're joining. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I have with me Miss Shawntá Howard, right? She is the secretary of the Pan Africanism Center. Um, Hi, Shawntá. How are you doing today?
Hi, I am doing well. I'm recovering from a cold, so please forgive my voice. Um, I really want to talk today about the importance of us working together as Pan Africans. I'm currently in Virginia Beach. I'm kind of getting over a cold, so please forgive my voice. Um, but I'm doing well, and I'm glad that we're here talking about this very important topic.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be doing this too. Thank you very much. Shanta, can you take a bit? Would like to know about what you do, would like to know about the Global Pan Africa Museum Center, what you do, and just a quick introduction about you and the center would be great for all our viewers around the world.
Yes, what yes. Well, I started off in risk management here in America. I graduated with a degree in marketing. I went on to the risk management insurance industry. That allowed me to have a bird's eye view of specific risks that impact just people in general. And so from there on, I ventured into the insurance industry. And in 2019, when President Trump was in office, I started my business. I started a beauty supply business, and um, I found that we had some hurdles in terms of our trade. And we have countries that are basically, um, they're not paying their fair share to the African people for their resources, right? And so, what we need to do as Africans throughout the diaspora is ensure that our resources, our products, and services are being paid for at market value. And I say that that's because it's just very important, right? That we pay what we owe, and other people also pay what is owed to us as African people. And so that when I started my business, I began to realize, no, sorry, my makeup. I began to realize that there were some hurdles in our distribution supply. One
Hmm.
hurdle being is that all of our supply chain resources go through China and other countries for refinement. And within the continent of Africa, we don't have a lot of refinement of the resources so that the African people could sell it in the open market, and so that the money actually goes back to the community. So that's my call. I've realized that that was a risk for African people, that we didn't own our supply chain, and the resources that are extracted and exploited from Africa does not it doesn't serve purpose for African people in terms of economic and financial empowerment.
Oh, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for highlighting the orders that you noticed and how you took upon yourself to identify the calling. I think that you did highlight right now that your role in risk management allowed you to identify this, and to take me to some of the questions that I will ask you through the course of today's conference and today's meeting
Mhm.
about the role of Africans in the diaspora. I mean, that's basically what we're doing, which I think is a very profound topic. But let's talk about your journey. I know you just shared a little bit of it, but I would like you to share about your personal journey as a business owner in the
Mhm.
diaspora. And, I like some milestones, some challenges in your role, and how your role as an Africa has shaped your business perspective.
Yeah, certainly. So when I started my business in 2019, I retired after 20 years in corporate America. I started my business in 2019 as a beauty supply owner. And while I was building my supplies for my retail outlet, I realized that there are countries that basically have um, a monopoly on our supply chain, right? And I learned very quickly that I was going to have some economic challenges navigating the trade system. It's not easy for a small business owner like myself that don't have, millions of dollars in the bank and, you know, uh, those resources to start a business. But I did save, and I had very good, what we call here, credit in the United States, which is important. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
so, but still, I found myself challenged with being able to grow my business because of the supply chain issues. I would have to go through different companies, and they had very stringent rules on how much supply I could actually purchase. Um, and that's because we don't own the supply chain. So I had this one particular company that quoted me a very high minimum to purchase items. It was like $25,000 to purchase items from them. And usually the minimums is about $1,000 to maybe $2,000 at the most. If I had a warehouse, then $25,000 would be reasonable. But I had a small retail space. But that was just a strategy. It was just a tactic to deter me from opening my business and also stop me from potentially growing my business. Um, and so I reached out to other Black owned beauty supply stores, and I found out that that was very common practice. And but here in America, it's illegal because we have a free market system. And so that free market system, unless there's a product like alcohol or some type of licensed product where only a
Right.
select number of people could, then you could create those barriers.
That's
But for beauty supply, that's not the case. And so our antitrust and monopoly laws are there to protect us as Americans. But it's costly. It's extremely costly to be able to afford an attorney to fight you in trade court.
right.
So I entered law school. I started learning a little bit more about law. I have an MBA in business. So I wanted to get a master's degree in law just to get a understanding of how the laws apply domestically and internationally. And it gave me a great viewpoint. So now I know what questions to ask, and I know what to expect from the legal system. And what I don't know, I reach out to attorneys. But knowing what questions to ask is so important. And so that's my journey. I want to ask the right questions to get the right answers, to connect people together so that the people in Africa and Africans throughout the diaspora can be able to finally have economic and financial freedom. That's all we're asking. Let's level the playing field. Okay. If I have the
Definitely.
same qualifications as someone else, then there should not be unfair obstacles and hurdles put in place to prevent me from
Okay.
profiting, right? Because that matters. So that's my journey.
Well, thank you very much, Shawntá. I'm very impressed as the your journey through corporate. You spent like 20 years in corporate America, and then you started to focus on your calling, your business, and you didn't allow any others stand in your way. What I picked from what you just said was you reached out to other to other African business owners, or did you say what other Black business owners, and you noticed that it was the same thing. They have experienced the same fate. And what you said about asking the right questions, it means that you get to share this information. And that brings me to my next question. Um, how can Pan-Africanists and business owners collaborate to advocate for policies? Like when you're talking, I just kept on hearing about the policies that are there and how sometimes they're unfair. Some of the time, we don't even have the right information to navigate this business orders. So how can Pan-Africanists and business owners collaborate to advocate for policies that facilitate smoother cross-border business transactions? I mean, I'm even going to cross-border business transactions, even right there in the diaspora with the African community. How can we come together? How can we collaborate to ensure that we have this to, foster a more conducive business environment?
That is a great question. And so what I would say is just a skill resource exchange. So here in America, we helped build this country, right? Early on, be it the indigenous people, Africans, and there were other immigrants as well, but particularly, Africans built this nation. And so through that, we acquired a lot of real skills that could easily transfer over to Africa. For example, one of the major impacts to trade is logistics, getting the materials from the port inland into the places that need it the most. So we have great experience within the African American community building roads and bridges, tunnels, and other items that's necessary to help trade move faster into developing countries. So we could get together. I want to put together a database of all of the skill sets and people individually that are willing to participate in the rebuild of Africa. I'm working with some IT professionals to build this infrastructure so that we can begin to collect the resources that we need. So let's say that there's a situation, I'll use Burkina Faso, for example. They're building an HVAC plant that is being sponsored by another country. So what America can do, what Africans in America could do, we own a HVAC company, a heating and cooling company, a refrigeration company. So what we would do is we could literally bring our business to Burkina Faso to help them learn how to repair a lot of these heating and cooling systems, as well as how to build them, install them into homes, as well as refrigeration. Refrigeration is very important. With the skill sets that we acquired here in America, we're able to bring refrigeration throughout the continent. We're able to help pave roads and build bridges. We're able to help with marketing and all these other areas that we do have, because we are a commercial society. It's very commercial. So we'll be able to help Africans market on the global market and actually reap the benefits of their resources. It just brings me to tears. And I'm not exaggerating. Whenever I see children working in these mines, and I know that that's the only option that they have. I'm not blaming the people of Africa. I'm blaming the process and the procedures that we need to create fairness and equity within the trade and resource acquisition market. So if we have land, for example, here in America, and if that land has resources on it, we have a right to procure the resources and sell it in order to better ourselves and our families. That's the same opportunity that needs to be afforded to Africans throughout the diaspora. Because I want to make it clear, it's not just on the continent. We're talking about Africans in the Caribbean, that still have the same challenges, that have resources that they aren't able to refine and sell in an open market. And they actually have to import the items that are indigenous to their area. That costs more. And the more things cost, the less discretionary income you have in order to survive. So that's my push. I'm working with local government leaders here in America to make sure that we are building fair policies that reach throughout Africans, throughout the diaspora. We're not asking for a free ride. We're just asking to pay it what you owe in terms of the resources, right? Physical resources and labor, human resources. Let's talk about that. Human resources. Let's pay what we owe to human resources in terms of Africans doing the work and getting compensated fairly as if they were being compensated in the open market in any other country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It has been so impactful for me myself. But I like that you touched on the policy. I feel like policy is one aspect. We need to ensure that those policies are entrenched. We need to ensure that we have fair trade laws, and we need to ensure that we push for this. Like I'm very, very impressed with the work that you're doing. Thank you very much. But now my question is, I want to have more insight about the Global Pan Africa, so the Global Pan Africanism Network. As Anashiro, as a secretary, I want to know, because I know you said you're working on, you're collaborating with the locals, you're collaborating with some local government leaders in the diaspora, you're collaborating with business owners, you're bringing together a database. And I think data is power. You need to have
Yeah.
information first. And you're doing all of this. I want you to talk about the role of the Global Pan Africanism Network when it comes to ensuring and fostering business engagement. Because I believe policy is one part, but ownership is another part. And I believe the ownership as we owning this, we being at the forefront of the fight as Africans for um, blacks, as it were, pushing this. I'm wondering what is the role of the Global Pan Africanism Network in this, and what have they been doing so far? It's basically like a two-part questions. I would like if you could highlight the role of the Global Pan Africanism Network when it comes to ensuring and fostering business engagements in for Africans in the diaspora and Africans generally, but also to talk about what we can do, how we can take ownership. We can't just leave. There's so much work that the network is doing, and not of African business owners don't know about it. How can we join it? How can we take ownership of this? It's our fight. We're going to reap the results.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and this is a huge process for us. This is a historic process, right? So what we will have to do is break down into like regions or territories within Africa, and it could be based on states or countries in Africa. We need to understand what the resources are and what the needs are, so that we can match the needs with being able to deliver them. The database will allow us to understand that, right? So geographically, we have to understand, okay, what are the needs in Kenya? Uh, um, and what skills, resources is needed in order to help people in Kenya with whatever businesses that they may have. I'm working with some people in Ghana, for example, and so they have all this inventory that they cannot sell in the open market. African art, the kente cloth, just all this stuff that they have, but they can only sell it locally. Recently, I believe Ghana was given permission to kind of sell in the global market. So when I opened my beauty supply store, I didn't have any problems linking up with Amazon and eBay and Facebook Marketplace, right? And so it was very easy for me to get my products to the open market. But within the continent, there are a lot of hurdles. And for example, this one village in Ghana, if I could get there and do an inventory of their products, upload it to Amazon, utilize my shipping and tracking networks that I've already established to get their products from their wherever it's being stored into the global market. And that's something that I was working on before COVID. I've already built the infrastructure. I live on a coastal city. We have a trade port. So let's say I want to ship textiles, or I want to ship kente cloth, or I want to ship artwork, or I want to ship in food products. I have to first get someone to Kenya, to Ghana, that has the resources to be able to put those products on the open market like I did. Right. So I go there, I'll scan, we'll come up with a market price for each product, scan it, assign a unique SKU identifier, put it on the open market to sell. And then your economy is moving just like our economy is moving. That's the end goal. You all have resources that are stuck in Africa or only given to a few countries to export. That's not fair trade. Fair trade is that you have a store and you say, hey, I have retail, I have products to sell. I just need a method to sell it. So I'll say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Is it a regional product? For example, is it a type of heating oil that's used for gas in certain areas, like our cold areas, like Canada, the North? They use gas typically a lot for heating, right? So I'll connect with whoever is the producer of gas in that country. We would connect with the people in the northern states that need that resource at an affordable price. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is we have countries, and I'm all for BRICS and what's happening there, because it's giving Africa resources that they need. But we also have to make sure that there are controls in place. You see what I'm saying? To make sure that it's not business as usual. So let's say we have countries that are coming in to invest in Africa that's going to say, I'm going to help you build the resources to get your products and services on an open market. But we're just going to give you, it's an investment that you have to pay back with fair interest rates and fair terms. That's another problem. We don't always get the best contracts. We don't always get fair terms. And so we have to make sure that there's oversight, right? Because what is a law if it's not being implemented or if it's not being enforced, right? So we have to make sure that the laws are being enforced. We have to understand what the laws are and when they're being broken, and we have to have a mechanism to hold people accountable. You know, and accountability piece is extremely important. So I mean, it's yeah.
What I love about your answer is how simple it is. We like to talk about Africa as a continent, and that's what Pan Africanism is about. To talk about Africa as a global continent. But I love that your response, even in the face of Pan Africanism, is that we break it down into segments. We look at the specific needs in specific regions and specific cities. It can't be one size fits all. We have to, and I feel like that's how we can get to the new temperance. I feel like that's how we can get the solution. What needs to be done in Kenya? What needs to be done in Angola? How can we leverage the infrastructure? How can we get the information that they need there? How can we do this? And I think that that's very impressive. And I'm assuming that that's what the Global Pan African Network is about, and that's what you're currently doing. But we have so many comments and so many. I take some questions, and I would like to just read them. I'll just read both the comments and the questions. Thank you, Nacho. Nacho says, I'm watching from Angola. Thank you. Greg Wick says, this is a youth discussion. Thank you. We think so too. I love it. Michael Deeper says, won't we benefit from narrowing the focus to a few specific countries in Africa to work with? The continent is so large, and it may be easier to make an impact in a single state or region, i.e. East Africa. That was just what we spoke about. I mean, yeah. So yeah, totally. I guess I like that we have the same mindset. There's so many similar ideas here. Yes, that's exactly what Ms. Shawntá just said. It's better to start with specific areas to implement it. It will be so large. I mean, Africa. You can barely even cross. Okay, someone says Ghana has been. Okay, no, I think I've passed this. Okay, Greg Wick says, I think one of the political leaders / president just petitioned for opening the borders for free trade across the border. Yeah, I think we have the AFTA currently passed, which talks about free trade across the continent. So yeah, yes, Pan-Africanism, we're making so much progress. But in the same vein, a different comment says, but you can barely even cross a border without the crime at the border with bullying, etc. It's outrageous. Hashtag the self-hate is real. Yeah, I feel like that's something I'll let you touch on later about, African relationship. How can we, in light of Pan-Africanism, in the light of fostering collaboration between countries, between different Africa. I think you're talking about the collaboration between Africans and Africans in their diaspora, whereas it's not such a rosy relationship. There are Africans in diaspora that don't think that they need to collaborate with Africans. There's just this, like she said, self-hate. There's this, we don't yet know that we're in this together, where we have the same vision and goal. There's not yet a global goal. Like we're working towards the same thing. It's for the continent. So maybe you could touch on that a little bit, since it's one of the things.
So what we're targeting are people that are like-minded. And so if someone is not like-minded, then this is not for them. And that's okay. That's okay. Because I come up with that a lot. So we have, African Americans in America, we are very diverse, right? And we had this rule back in the day that was implemented. If you are 1% African or Black, you're African, you're Black, 1%. So we have a very diverse African population. And a lot of, because of the struggles of African people, some African Americans choose not to assign themselves with Pan Africanism or even with being African. And that's okay. That's fine. We're looking for like minded individuals that understand the need for fairness and to be treated fairly and to have economic freedom, right? It's just unfortunate that people of African descent have the struggles, the economic struggles that no other population has. America is very diverse. We get a lot of immigrants from all over the world. And when they come here, they join forces and they build businesses and they hand their businesses down to people within their network. We have to have that same type of connection, right? If you have 1% African blood in you and you identify as being African and you have been on the front lines of fighting for Africa, then yeah, we want you to be a part of this. But I understand, just as all of our past African leaders, there are risks associated with it. So you have to be courageous. I'm fortunate enough to have, I was never in the military myself, but my ex-spouse is in the military. I live in a military town. The military and protection of yourself, here in America, we're free to protect ourselves, defensively if we feel that our lives are being threatened, or if we feel like our financial security is being threatened. We have a procedure to hold people accountable. And we need to implement those same types of procedures globally to hold people accountable that are doing things that are not in line with just human rights laws. We have to make sure that we're enforcing those. Those are the basics, right? So before we can begin to really establish alliances across cultures, we have to work together very well. Because what happens and what has happened historically is once we open ourselves up, we put ourselves in a very vulnerable situation because we don't have that collective unity. We don't have that 360 view to ensure that there are not people trying to join this cause in order to cause conflict within the African people. And so we have to guard not only our resources, we have to guard ourselves, we have to guard our relationships between one another. People look at me sometimes and they say, well, you don't look Black. Like, it depends upon how I wear my hair. My grandmother was indigenous, native, and my grandfather, we believe that he has roots in West Africa because we can't trace him as far back as my grandmother's family. And so my grandfather was very, dark complexion man. And my mother, both of them were fair complexion, and they had various, my grandmother was Native American and my father's side was white and Black and Puerto Rican and so we have to understand that we have an African population that is so diverse, and each person identifies with their roots differently. And so those people that don't feel comfortable identifying with the African cause or don't want to participate, we're not going to force them, right? Because we just want like-minded people that understand that everyone should have economic freedom. Everyone should know what it feels and looks like to be in a safe neighborhood, to be able to walk outside of your home and not have to worry about whether or not you're going to make it back, or whether or not you're going to have food on the table. Food, clothing, and shelter is the basic need of everyone. And this is not something that we should make a major profit off of: food, clothing, and shelter. There are other areas in which we could profit from, like energy, but that is the basics that we need to establish. And when you have people constantly struggling for food, clothing, and shelter, they can't think about anything else. They can't think about the macroeconomics and how natural resources play on the global market, and how it's so important that you own your resources and it comes back into your country so that you guys can reinvest in schools, education, infrastructure, whatever it is that people need. but we have to have focus. And it's okay to say, because all everybody else, all other cultures do it, we're going to focus on us first. It's not that we're excluding anyone, but we need to really build a relationship amongst Africans that has never been there. Once we build a relationship between ourselves, once we start looking at each other as brothers and sisters fighting for the same cause, we'll be able to move forward. But when we're so quick to include, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing to include people, but we have to first build a network within ourselves. And that's just business. So when you're building a business, you don't go out there and talk to, anyone until you build that business foundation, because that's intellectual property, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
ideas. You keep it inside until you build the infrastructure, and then there is information that is need to know, and not everybody need to know, and that's business.
Uh,
You know what I'm saying? And so we have to
yeah.
implement those same business strategies, you know, that other cultures have implemented and been extremely successful. I mean, the continent of Africa has the most resources of any continent in the world, and people want to say that African is poor. It's not poor; it's exploited. There's a big difference. African people are not dumb, they're not stupid, they're exploited. You know what I'm saying? And we have to change the narrative and begin to love ourselves and love one another, you know, whether and I want to talk on, I wish we had more time to talk about tribalism and compare it to what's happening here in America with African Americans, and how we have these sects of Africans that aren't working together, and we need to really disrupt those boundaries and make sure that we're working together so that we can move resources freely throughout the world. Relationships matter. That's what they teach us in business school. That's what they teach us, in business. Relationships matter. I don't have to agree with everything, but let's agree on three things so that we can move our progress forward.
Thank you very much. People in the comments are saying, wow, wow, I totally agree. I love that. I love what you said about not everybody would have the same vision with us, and that's fine. I think that this hit me so strong because I've never thought of it that way. In different whenever I have people with different of opinion, I'm like, oh my god, you need to see this, you need to come on board. But it's distracting. It's very distracting because we need to focus on people we like minds, we like visions. And then when we make progress, because what happens is instead of us to make progress, people with like minds and like vision, we're distracted about getting people to come on board. We're distracted about what they're saying in the other room. And I think it's good. But I like that you still ended by saying that, but we recognize relationships. So we're not saying that we don't need you. We're not saying that we don't you won't get a seat at the table. We're saying that we would focus on the vision, and the vision is what is more important. The ideology is what's more important. And relationship is important, but it's a need to know basis. Would you collaborate? Would you come on board? If you come on board, please do come on board. And when you were talking, you touched on tribalism, and I know you said you wanted to talk more into it, and I think that you can. But I want to ask you a question about youth involvement. So now we know that it's very important as African. We're talking about what different Pan Africanism Network is doing, different organizations, individuals, what we're doing, and I mean it's going to be wasted effort if we cannot pass it on. If we don't have people who even understand what Pan Africanism is, who don't recognize the Pan Africanism efforts, because I think that usually what I find is that there's a disconnect. You see a generation doing something, pushing for something, another generation is distracted by the day-to-day social norms, and then there's no continuity. So you find that, oh, by the time that generation gets to the age group of where the first generation was, they now realize, oh my god, why did I not take this seriously? This is something I need to do. But they say gap, and we keep, we don't keep making the efforts like we should. It's like two step forward, one step back, because there's a lag in the system. So how do we get the youth involved now? So we have youth watching now. I'm young, I think I'm a youth. How can I get involved? I know it later about Pan Africanism. What do I need to do? What are things I should do? The opportunities are there. How can I? So we have, if we have someone right now saying, okay, this is great, but okay, I have some skill set. What can I do? What should I do? What's the first thing I should do?
And this is I'm a firm believer of practicing what I preach. So I have 3 children, and my oldest son, he learned construction from his father. And so he has his own heating and cooling business that he's trying to build. My youngest son, what we have to do is understand what children are good at. What do you like doing? What are your skill sets? Right? What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? How can I help you get there? That's the most important part. We're asking them what they want to do, but we're not asking them, how can I help you get there? And keep in mind, when I help you, you're going to help yourself. So it's a partnership. It's like 50-50. Like if you want to own your own business and you have the drive and determination to do it, I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm not going to do it for you. Right? But we have to understand, again, what are your needs as a child? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, I would like to bring more Africans abroad to study here, to learn trades, right? We're in the process of building a trade school. So how we just have to find out what they want to do. Where do they see themselves? And just don't laugh at them. Like my kids, they like my sons, they all majored in music in high school. I believe the arts is very important. Incorporating music into the curriculum. Music is a big part of our culture. And so my sons wanted to make beats. They wanted to be the next, I don't know, rapper or beat maker. And I say, okay, that's good. But what's your plan B if that doesn't work out? You got to have a plan B. You have to have a plan. And so we have to encourage kids and introduce them to new things so that they know what they want. If a child has I saw this a lot in urban centers, right? Because I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood. I grew up in an urban area. I grew up in an area that unfortunately had drugs and just, yeah, right? And so if children were stuck there without any external contact, their line of sight is very narrow. So a lot of the children say, yeah, I want to grow up to be a dope dealer. Yeah, I want to grow up and be this, that, and other, because that's all they saw, right? But once you introduce children and people into more opportunities, that increases their line of sight. So let's take that to, I don't know, I'm not from Africa, but I could just use, if you live in, even Lagos, Nigeria, huge major city, major coastal city. They're building, what is it, eco center or something, some type of major economic center that's supposed to be in Nigeria. How is the government of Nigeria building the foundation and developing young minds through the educational system so that they could fulfill the positions of tomorrow? How is Ghana invested in education so that the children, education and trade, because not everybody want to go to college. Some people like to just make things. Like my kids, they like to make stuff. They didn't like college like I did. They like to build and construct. So we have to give them options, and we're not giving our young people options. Like my children, they have more options than I had, right? I had more options than my parents had, right? Because as each generation go on, hopefully you're getting better and better economically and financially and educationally and trade wise. So that's the goal. We have to build a pipeline from the time that children are born, where we have that nurturing environment. We have to really focus on family, right? Family planning is something very important. A family is a small business, whether people understand that or not, right? You have 2 people that are working as partners. It's a small business. So are you cultivating your children? And if not, what do you need to make it happen? So it's all about a needs assessments. We have need assessments that we need to do across all segments of the African people. What are your needs? What are your resources? What are your skill sets? And how can we work together to make it happen? That's just that simple. Just that simple. And you'll be surprised. A lot of times we take for granted our skill sets. We've been trained to take for granted our skill sets because we haven't gotten paid really for our labor. So we take for granted our skill sets. And that's why the database will help us to see, wow, you have experience in cultivating whatever it is. You're a farmer. Do you know that they're closing farms here in America and building residential property so that they can control our food supply here in America? Once you control people's food, you control them. So there's a lot happening, and we just have to do a needs assessment, build this database, build a network, deploy resources to African countries when and where they're needed just in time. So if Russia's coming in and building a heating and cooling plant in Burkina Faso, then we have to send a team of Americans that work in HVAC and heating and cooling here in America to go over there to oversee that project, to ensure that, one, their labor laws are being implemented, that people are not being exploited, that people are being paid fairly, that we start to introduce benefits that we have here in America so that people can have healthy lives. What does that look like from an African perspective, though? So that's where the needs assessments come in. We have to understand what the needs are. We have to understand what the resources are. We have to understand the laws and regulation of each country. But basically, we have to establish a relationship within ourselves. And I think that's the most important part, because once you build a solid foundation within a people, no one can infiltrate it and destroy it. So we have to first build that foundation. And in America, at one time, we even had laws where 5 or more Black people couldn't congregate in the same place. So imagine the psychological impact of that over the years, right? You still see that. So we have to get rid of a lot of the psychological damage and trauma that have been imposed on African people as a means to control them and their resources. But first, it starts with that need assessment. I can't help you if I don't know what you need. I can't help you if I don't know, the process, the rules, the regulations, the laws in your country. So we have to organize. It's a huge project, but I believe we have the skill sets to do it.
That's truly profound. That's so profound. I love that you layered that response from the need assessment, but not just looking at it. Because when people hear need assessment, when you started speaking, I was thinking about that it was from the viewpoints of the government, or just the different Pan African needs and incentives to do the need assessment. But while you were speaking, it's also for we Africans, young people, business owners to do a need assessment. What skill set do I have that is needed in these countries? Is it needed in what's it called, in the diaspora? Is it needed in another African country? So that's basically how to scale that you know that you are needed. You recognize, like you said, you first recognize that you have value. Every skill that you have is valuable. And
Mhm.
I want you to talk more on the limitation. So yes, I have some skill set, but there's some limitation based upon not providing options. For example, say my interest is in trades, and some laws and some policies and some government and some countries do not still give recognize it as an education, do not recognize trades as an education. That limits the opportunities that you would have. So I want you to think of this from the standpoint of collaboration. How can business owners, people in trades and industry, Pan-Africanists around the world, how can they collaborate with governments of these African countries, or local government? How can they collaborate with them? How can they, what you call, enforce, or push for policies that is inclusive, that allows for this what's it called? That allows for we taking our for allows for us to get value for with the skills that we have as Africans. That allow for I'm sorry, my thoughts is trying.
I
How,
get
how
it.
can we collaborate? How can collaborate as business owners and Pan African centers? How
Well,
can
and
we
so I'll be
the African
specific. So we have, I say, um, okay, you said a lot, and I'm proud. So the reason that trade is not taught is because it's powerful, right? It's powerful economically. And that's what I think. Um, I say that because my situation with my beauty supply store, if I could call up a supplier and say, hey, I'm having some issues with this supplier, I need this product, can you ship it to me? There's so much there. I mean, you can't just do that. So first, what we have to do is understand that there are ways that we could begin importing products from Africa right now, right? I know store owners, I know people that have businesses that need certain products that's not on our market, that's not within our market because we have a supply chain deficit. I know people that send shipping containers from Nigeria, from Ghana. So what we need to do is just find out. I could go to the grocery store here and say, hey, can I get your inventory? Let me get a list of your inventory. I want to see if I could shop for the same products you have in your store in Africa. I want to see what the costs are. I want to see what the barriers to import cooking oil or sugar or flour or rice or any of these staple items, right? Give me your inventory. I'm going to shop for them in Africa. That's hard. You can't do it. We don't have that infrastructure yet. I have a grocery store owner that needs supplies, right? But we don't have the logistical infrastructure. So I don't know what areas in Ghana I could go get cooking oil from, right? So geographically, we have to understand what the inventory is in Africa. So where can I buy cooking oil? Where can I buy sugar? Where can I buy flour? Where can I buy rice, beans, right? Right now, what country will allow me to export to America without going through China? I can go through China. I have suppliers. I can easily go through China to get these products, but I don't want to. Why should I have to? I don't like middlemen. And we've always had a middle person, middle entity in all of our transactions as Africans. And that's why our products cost so much. That's why our cost of living is so high. We've always had an unfair barrier that made our products and services much more expensive and also harder to acquire. And so we have to change that. So I need to know what the inventory is in Kenya. What farms do you have? Do you have the capability to refine rice? If not, what do you need to make it happen, right? So you have to do this needs assessments, and then you have to do gap analysis, right? So the gaps are: I have a store here in Norfolk, Virginia, that's owned by a man that's of Jamaican descent, and there is a global supply chain issue, and the products and services in his store cost more because he's not affiliated with any chain stores and he don't have connections directly to suppliers. So he have all these middlemen and women cutting into his profit margin, increasing his prices, and making his products unaffordable within the Black community. That's the business case of all of our Black businesses here. So we need an inventory. I need to know what we need here and what you all are offering. So what are you offering? What products do you offer? And a lot of times, and I also want to say, a lot of times we look at things monetarily, and we have to get back to our roots. Bartering is very good. So let's say I have a product here that I could easily ship to you, and then we can exchange at same market value. So the market value for whatever product you all want here, I need palm oil. I can't find palm oil in America. It's so hard to find palm oil, or like for my beauty supply products, a lot of the oils, the essential oils come from Africa. Zinc, when COVID happened, zinc was like a major need to recover from COVID. And in our supply chain, we have that mineral zinc in just about everything. I had a friend who lived in Nigeria, and he had to take his son to the hospital because he cut his foot on zinc rock. I had no idea that was even possible. I was like, what? You all are walking around in zinc and not marketing from it? Do you know that every product on our shelf has zinc in it? So let's say his family, let's say they close their town and say, hey, we're going to start refining zinc, and we're going to ship it to America so they can import it into their production process. And we're going to stop China and any other country from coming in and extracting our resources and selling it back to us and our people. So those are just some of the things. Like, again, it goes back to you don't know the skill sets you have because we haven't quite been appreciated for our skill sets, just like our resources. We make it seem like what you're walking around is not essential. Everything that's in Africa is essential to life globally. And that's that realization that we all have to understand and leverage it. And it's okay. Every other country has this process. You cannot come to America or any other country and extract resources and fly off in a plane without without there being consequences. And we have to have that same type of procedure and process for Africa and African resources.
That's truly profound. I love that you said that we need to start with, need analysis and gap analysis. And that's that way you're able to recognize what product that you need. You're able to do a proper inventory. But I still find that after you do a gap analysis, after you after you find out that this is what needs to be done, even if you have all the data, all the people with the skill set, then the last problem becomes legislation, it becomes law. Like while you were speaking, you mentioned that where are the places that I'm allowed to get this product? And for you to say allowed, that's a law thing, that's a legislation thing. So my question would be, how do we get the government on board? How do we get them to see the big picture? How can businesses? What's the role of businesses, global businesses, businesses in the diaspora? Because I feel like they would have more influence than local businesses. And how do we get Pan-African and Pan-Africanist Center? How do we get them to get the government on board?
Well, we have to go to our legislators, and that's what I'm working on here in Virginia. I have worked on several campaigns, the governor campaign, lieutenant governor campaign, attorney general campaign. I've always advocated for free trade amongst Africans, but it's getting small businesses to think outside of their own needs, right? So just like a family, a business, they have basic needs in order to survive. And if they are inundated with bills and expenses and can barely keep their doors open, they're not thinking about global trade. It's just like if you're suffering, if you don't have food, clothing, shelter, you're not thinking about global trade. So we first have to help them understand what it means when you participate in trade globally, and how we do have a trade deal that we need to implement and ensure that it's being implemented, just like the other trade deals are. And we have to begin to build the infrastructure. We can't wait on anyone to do it, right? So what you're talking about is how do we move from planning to execution, right? And that's something I do very well. We have several businesses that, because of COVID, they're not operating as they should. But I'm going to keep planning and working, because that's a legislative issue. We didn't help people recover from the impacts of COVID. We sent a lot of our money to other countries where it should have been reinvested back into America. And that's why we have an election coming up. But what we need to do is we need to help small businesses understand that if you want to stay in business, the long-term goal is to never go out of business for businesses to be around indefinitely forever, right? So we have to help businesses understand that if you depend on one supply chain, you are jeopardizing the success of your future business. You are jeopardizing multi-generational wealth. Do you want the wealth to stop at you, or do you want to be able to hand down that wealth generation after generation after generation? That's the goal. So we have them. So it's what we have this saying here is, what's in it for me? People always want to know, okay, you sound good. It sounds good. What's in it for me? So in order to understand what's in it for me, I need to know what you need. So it goes back to the need assessment. So what is it that you need? You need to supply your retail space. You need to be able to buy products and services at a low price, so you don't price out customers and they decide not to shop with you. So you need access to low cost inputs. If I could lower your input costs, be it groceries for a grocery store, or if you own a manufacturing company, if I can help you reduce your input costs, long term, you will see profits. If I could help you diversify your supply chain So let's say if you can't get a supply from this area because they're having a weather situation, you have to have multiple ways to get your products and services. That's what Amazon does. That's what Walmart did. Walmart took over the manufacturing and logistical transportation industry because they knew how to organize. The Walton family had a very close structure. Most of the people that worked for Walmart were family members. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a page out of the Walmart textbook, and we're going to say that our businesses, the infrastructure is going to be closed to Black African Americans. It's not to say that we're not exclusive, but we have a like shared interest, and we have a history of being exploited. So we have to protect that as a risk assessment. It's just a risk assessment. It's not racist. It's a risk assessment. We have to look at it from that perspective. It's not personal, right? So just like the insurance company, if they find that your area has violence or whatever, guess what? Your rates are going up. It's a risk. It's going to cost you more, right? And so risk assessment is built into the business system, and everybody knows it, right? But the thing is we have this motto here in America: you buy low and you sell high. So let's look
Right.
at that from a global perspective. So I'm going to buy my resources low, below market value, right? So I can make an extreme profit on the at the expense of African people. That's not what we're going to do anymore. We're not doing that anymore. We're not playing that game anymore. It's not fair, and no other culture will sit by and allow anyone to do that to them. So it's okay to say, hey, we're not going to play that game anymore. You're going to pay what you owe. You're going to treat us fairly. We're going to treat you fairly. Yes, you're going to have a seat at the table, but we need to build this infrastructure amongst ourselves, and we will be inclusive. We are going to be inclusive. We have to be inclusive. We can't do it on our own, but no one else is going to control the fate of African people but African people.
Thank you very much. I somehow you came back to where you started from when you talked about your business and the orders that you faced and how you had to do a risk assessment about when you started off your beauty line and the orders you faced with the product and how you had to reach through to the other businesses in your network, other African businesses in network, and you found that they do the same. And I feel like when you talked about the fact that we need to, basic need comes first, but still you would constantly have those basic needs. You constantly have no food and no shelter if you don't think big picture. And so you have to do risk assessment to see what do I focus on and how do I, come out of this hurdle. And I love that somehow we come back to talking about relationship and collaboration and information. And that's where we started from. And from your own personal story, a personal journey, they would put limitation on your business if you don't break through that um limits that they put through that what's it called, the policies as we started with. And I think that's very profound. I would like to read some comments before I ask the last questions, and we have I would like you to say the last word. So we have Greg Wick still here saying I totally agree. Normalize class and accountability. We are not outnumbered, we are unorganized. So I like that. We're not outnumbered. I think that
Yeah.
was when we're talking about, you know, we don't need the numbers. We just need people to come together with the same vision. And idea Samuel Brew says it's a very important lesson. Hope you guys can be able to come out to the hard rich place in Africa. Oh yeah, definitely. That's what she's saying. Send some teams to ensure there's accountability. For example, she used Burkina Faso as an example. And that's why we need more people to collaborate and cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
Antonio L. Lawson says that's one of the problems that we face in the West. Africans in the West don't seem to realize that we don't have to agree on anything to unite. Yeah. Michael the Pierce says we have been divided and in a subdued position, but we don't need to remain there. And he also says she's right. Everyone won't get it, but all you need is commuted, faithful group. Yes, we just need few people, a handful of people who
Yeah.
agree Same page with you. Michael D. Pierce says progress is rarely linear. It will be ups and downs, ebbs and flows, highs and lows. And I think that this is very profound because I mean, I was saying that we won't see progress if there's no transferability, but even just getting the word out, getting the information out, talking about it is
Yeah.
progress. Um, Greg Week says that they won't even teach us how to how to get a freaking apartment or buy a vehicle. Okay, I think he's in the US. Okay. Um, Michael D. Pierce says, right, there's always been a middleman. I don't think I can take so much comment because of our time. Robert says, Yeshua blesses you. Someone says fact. And yeah, I knew it was in the US because it says, yeah, I'm in Virginia. So, and someone says, Michael D. Pierce says, basic need comes first. Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
But you need.
I agree.
So,
And
yeah,
so
Michael.
what I would like to do is build housing. If I was queen for a day, if I had the power and the resources, I would go to places and build housing, right? Once you have a stable place to live, that it's because we're suffering in America. We have a homelessness problem post COVID. We have a very severe homelessness problem, and a lot of Black African people are subject to homelessness, right? Our entertainment industry took a nosedive, and that caused a lot of homelessness also. So housing would be one of the first priorities. And we have a construction company. I know a lot of builders. Once the slaves were freed in America, a lot of them already went into trade areas. So African Americans, we are heavy trades. I mean, we can build ships. We have shipbuilders that work for the military, right? That can weld ships and anything you need built. We have the labor here to import to Africa. So labor is something we have to also talk about, the immigration policies and how can we extract the skill sets from the various areas to deploy them to areas like Burkina Faso and other areas to help them build whatever manufacturing plants and plants that they have. So we could do it. We just have to come together, have some consistent maybe weekly meetings, and come up with a plan. I've already started some of that work, but yeah, it's not going to be easy, and I agree it's not going to be linear. um, but if we continue and we keep our focus and we focus on God and our ancestors, we could do anything. We could do anything.
Mhm.
We've just been programmed to believe that we
That
can't,
we can.
but we can and we will. Our ancestors are for us, are with us. If you see, there's a huge awakening happening within the African
Mhm.
diaspora. So we have to continue that momentum and stay focused. A lot of these other battles that's happening around us, we need to stay focused, because once we take our mind, our focus off, we end up being vulnerable, right? And so it's going to take a planning process, but we could do it. And there's some things that we could do, some quick wins right now, like my friend's business I was explaining. I could get his inventory. I could send it out. Tell me where I could buy these products directly from Africa at a good price. We could send shipping containers. We live in a port area, you know. So there's some quick wins, and there's going to be some strategic wins, right? Those long-term wins that we have to work on.
Thank you so very much. Well, I
Yes,
was going to
ma'am.
ask you about investments, and I love that you kind of still touched on that because you mentioned, and this is like everything that we're talking about. You mentioned need analysis, and I love that while you were talking, you highlighted some areas in the US like housing problems, and that affects the Africans in the US too. And I think that that shows us that if we wanted to invest as a community in the diaspora, Africans in the US, that would be a great place for an investment opportunity. And I think that this data and this information is all that we need. We just need to have the information of what are the needs and how can I do it. It's like just taking the skill sets to the needs of ensuring that the information of the proper needs analysis. So thank you very much. I'd like you to give your final note, and I would just like round up with one question and then you give
Okay.
your final note about looking forward. So this question is about the Global Pan Africanism Network, because because you're the secretary of the network. Of, Yeah. So looking forward, what is the network's strategic goal and initiative for further enhancing the relationships between Africa and diaspora and business owners and just in Pan African in the coming years? So I would like that you answer that and then you give your final thoughts for today's
Um,
session.
so the process is, we really have to begin what we're doing now is the step one, the conversation. Once we do the needs assessment, we'll be able to understand what the needs are and the resources. But I just want to draw attention to my hair, right? So my hair, I go to African braid shop here, right? And um, we have several, but not enough. So let's say I say, hey, I want to open a braid shop, right? I want to import African braiders. I'm gonna build a house or an apartment for them to stay. I'm going to provide them with the network that they need in order to be successful.
Mhm.
They're going to earn a living. Now these braids here in America, they cost 400 US dollars, right? And I know you could go to Africa and other countries and get it done at a lesser rate. But that's the market demand. They will pay it because of the quality. Africans come with great quality. We African people, we do things very well, right? I don't go to American braiders. When I want my hair braided, I go to African braiders, right? And so that's the skill set. And I'm just using that for as a simple example. But these braiders, they do very well for themselves. Now they could do better if they had networks like to get health insurance, for example. So those are the housing expenses are inflated, I feel, right? So we could do a lot to minimize the cost of Africans that want to come here and do business, but we need that same infrastructure in place if I want to come over there. So if I want to come over there, I may not be in a position to buy housing there, right? Because I'm investing in a business, right? So we have to build those networks. So I want people to really understand, like, back in the day, we had the what we call the Underground Railroads, right? You remember that was during slavery, where there was a
Yeah.
network of people that helped Africans get
Oh,
free.
yeah.
We need
True.
that now.
Very well.
We need that now. We need a process to help us to get that financial freedom that's available to us. Most of us are working for companies and have worked for companies and made millions of dollars for companies. We need to start doing that for ourselves. And we have the skill sets, both in America, Africa, and throughout the diaspora. Like I said, once we get this database going, once we start having consistent meetings, planning meetings, strategy meetings, coming up with tactical, which are short term, and strategic, those quick wins. How can I quickly start the exchange of products and services? How can I get, have, 20 braiders come to Virginia or North Carolina or South Carolina and open up a braid shop, because most of us are moving away from wigs because they destroyed our hair. Most people are moving back to our roots, our braids, what we grew up on. So how can I get some braiders? You know, I mean, then that's my job. Okay, I want the braiders over here. I'm gonna make sure that they are at home. How do I provide that home for them? Right? How do I make sure that their interests are protected? How do I make sure that they're given the same opportunities as other immigrants that come to this country? That's another problem, the colorism of immigration, right? So we need to just put our skill sets together. Whatever it is you're good at, let's put it together, put it on the table, and let's see how we could. Thank you, Greg Weeks. I'm working on one right now in the app form. I love it. That's the type of stuff we need, right? So when we're working for a business and they say, hey, they send an email, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, we jump on it right away, don't we? We need to have that same sense of urgency when it comes to ourselves, right?
Definitely.
I'm going to stop
Thank you
now. I
so
could go
much.
on forever.
Thank, yeah, yeah, and I could listen to you forever. I love that you on the same page with me because I was thinking about when you gave the example of the underground trade and rail network. What came to my mind immediately was the urgency. Urgency births innovation. At that point, it was about survival. They were thinking about
Mm,
survival, and then they came together. They collaborated. There was a
yep.
common goal and vision. And I think that's the same way we need to look at this. We need to look at it as urgent and important. We need to understand the urgency of it. We need to look at it as valuable. This is something I should join. This is something I should work on. This is something I should come on board. And yes, um,
Yeah, we do need a sense of urgency. I agree. That urgency, just like anything else, we need that sense of urgency. And it's, we are in a dire situation right now in America. And I might be understating it a little bit, but we really are in a bad place as a country. What's happening with our currency, right? What's happened with our supply chain. We have corruption in our government. And so while I am tapped into that because I am American, um, I'm more tapped into African liberation, right? And I
Mm,
feel like the American dream has to be rewritten in order to include the contribution, the real contribution of African people and African resources. You know, it is the resources that we haven't paid for, and that's human resources as well as, you know, those environmental resources. And so I'm trying to help lawmakers understand that when it comes to African business and African interests, no one is asking for a handout, right? We're asking for reasonable compensation, market value compensation, just as you would compensate any other country. Where we're asking not to be exploited anymore. We're not asking, we're demanding our rights because it's a right to be free. It's a fundamental right to be free. And with that freedom, you have to have economic freedom or you're not free. If you don't have financial freedom, you're not free, right? So that's a right, a fundamental right of freedom, right? And here in America, we have our Constitution, and a part of our Constitution is happiness. We have happiness built into a document. The pursuit of happiness is legally protected here in America.
yeah.
Ooh, think
Yeah.
about that. Think about that for a
Yeah.
minute. You're a lawyer. Think about that, right? So I'm unhappy right now. I'm unhappy at the state of African, the state of Africans in America and throughout the diaspora. I feel guilty when I have my iPhone. I feel guilty. I
Mm.
do
So
because
what?
I know where the resources come from. I know the exploitation, but in order for me to stay connected, I need a cell phone. I have a laptop. Where you know what I'm saying? And I'm tired of the feeling like that because I have to stand
Mm.
before God and give an answer for how I allowed my people to be exploited when I know and could have done better, right? So we all are going to be held accountable for what we do and what we don't do, you know. And so I don't I just feel like right now we have to work in a sense of urgency, and we have to be strategic. We have to be very consistent, concise, and all of
Mm.
those words that lead to a successful implementation of this African trade deal where the resources are reinvested back into Africa. I don't even wear diamonds. You see, I don't wear jewelry. I don't wear diamonds at all. Gold, I get the fake stuff. I do. I could afford. I don't because I know. Yeah, that's exactly. It's and the diamonds. Let's talk about how the diamonds were and gold were pushed in Black communities. So you're buying this stuff. Yeah, you have the resources. A lot of the rappers and the entertainers, they have the resources to buy it. But do you know where it comes from? How about you? Instead of you buying the diamonds, you get it tap into the resources of mining, and you go over there and you purchase a mine as a Black rapper that have millions of dollars, and you help refine it so that the people can work safely and
And
profit
get
from.
fair value.
You see what I'm saying? So that's
Mhm.
the type of things that I'm calling out within our community, because we got a lot of wealthy people that are very selfish and feel like I got this because of me. No, you're where you are because of our ancestors. And it is our responsibility to ensure that our ancestors did not die in vain. Okay. And I take that responsibility extremely seriously because I know what happened to my Native American ancestors. And that's why I'm standing here 10 toes down. Like, no, it's not going to happen anymore because guess what? God is watching. God is the equalizer. God, the most high
Mm.
God. You feel me? The creator. Okay. So people feel like they're powerless. We're not powerless. We've just been led to believe that we're powerless. We have a lot of power collectively because we basically build this global economy. However, we have yet to fully reap the benefits of being the global builders that we are. But that's about to change. That's about to change. That's why you see a lot of these cultures, a lot of these European countries are failing. It's karma, whatever you want to call it. You reap what you sow, is in the Bible, good and bad. So we're just going to work together. We're going to stay, have that precision focus. We're going to be like like Walmart, the Waltons. They started it. They closed their ranks to their family. Most of the executive leadership is family, still is family. African people, we're family. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
build our infrastructure, and we're going to help save our people so that they're not dying in mass numbers and being ignored. You know, so I have to stand before the creator and give an account for what I did or didn't do. I don't report to man. So my perspective is just a little different. I believe in fairness because, it's going to come back again. If you reap what you sow, and that is just the law. Is God's law.
Thank you very, very much. This has been such an insightful session. I'm leaving the session with renewed information and also with a renewed sense of urgency. And I love that we're rounding up the session with some of what you said: urgency, consistency, and accountability. I feel like that's a very good place to
Yes.
wrap today's conference. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the work that you're doing. We would love to, and I feel like we need to, give a shout out to the organizers, the and all the sponsors, the Pan African Leadership Center, the GPAN, the ABA network, every single sponsor, every single person giving us this platform to constantly talk about this, um, elucidate this. This is Thank you very much, and thank you to all the viewers. And I would appreciate that you share this. Like we said, progress is not linear, but get the word, pass the word out. Some people don't even have the idea. So thank you, everyone, and we'll be wrapping up today's conference. This is the third edition of the African Business Month. So check out all the sessions on YouTube, and have a lovely, lovely day. Sign out.
God bless you all. Thank you.
God bless you.